Do not buy a house in these 5 states in 2026. WARNS. Listen closely, as my objective is not to placate your sentiments but to safeguard your financial well-being. For anyone contemplating the purchase of a residential property within certain states is perilously close to committing one of the most substantial financial errors of their entire life. Having amassed and frankly lost millions throughout my extensive career in real estate, I can unequivocally state that the critical distinction between ultimate victory and crushing defeat hinges entirely upon one singular element: data, cold, unyielding, and often unpleasantly truthful data. The precise data points I am meticulously scrutinizing at this very moment are not merely suggesting, but rather screaming an urgent warning, indicating unequivocally that there exist 5 distinct states across this nation where, under no conceivable circumstances, should you consider deploying your hard-earned capital into residential real estate, not within the coming year, not even if confronted with an unimaginable imperative. Before I proceed to unveil which specific states have earned a place on this financial kill list, I implore you to take a crucial step. If the preservation of your wealth and the intelligent management of your money are genuinely important to you, then you must immediately engage with that subscribe button, striking it with resolute purpose. This channel stands as a beacon for financial survival, dedicated to ensuring that you are not left vulnerable and ultimately decimated within a marketplace where pervasive, often misleading narratives suggest that everything is perfectly sound. Here, we operate solely on unvarnished truth, eschewing convenient fictions. So subscribe now, become an integral member, and join this discerning community, because the profound insights I am about to impart are truths that the vast majority of conventional financial advisors simply lack the courage to articulate. Let us establish an unambiguous, fundamental principle right from the outset. A house, in its essence, is definitively not an investment. I fully comprehend that this assertion may directly contradict the long-held wisdom imparted by your parents or the encouraging reassurances continuously offered by your real estate agent, yet I am here to deliver the unadulterated reality. A primary residence is fundamentally a place of dwelling, a consumption item that relentlessly siphons your financial resources every single month. Consider the unending stream of property taxes, insurance premiums, ongoing maintenance requirements for everything from the roof to the furnace, and the inevitable structural upkeep of the foundation. It truly behaves as a ceaseless, cash-devouring entity. Now, can real estate, when approached strategically, indeed constitute a sound investment? Absolutely, without question. I personally possess diverse real estate holdings across the globe, but such ventures are only truly lucrative when executed with precision, acquiring assets in the correct geographical location at the opportune moment, and underpinned by robust economic fundamentals. And it is precisely these critical fundamentals that are currently not just slightly compromised, but fundamentally shattered, catastrophically so, within these 5 particular states. Most individuals fail to grasp a pivotal concept. When you engage in the purchase of a house, you are acquiring far more than a mere collection of 4 walls and a roof over your head. You are, in effect, buying into an intricate, interconnected economic ecosystem. You are intrinsically linking yourself to a specific tax structure, embedding yourself within a particular regulatory environment, becoming a participant in a local labor market, and perhaps most critically, aligning with overarching migration patterns. The vital questions that truly dictate whether your property's value will appreciate or, conversely, become a debilitating financial burden are these: where are significant populations choosing to relocate? To which regions are businesses actively transferring their operations? And perhaps most tellingly, Where is capital actively flowing? Having navigated these intricate markets for 4 decades, I have been an eyewitness to market cycles of boom and subsequent bust so extreme they would undoubtedly disorient the casual observer. I have observed countless individuals purchase properties at their market zenith, convinced of their own genius, only to witness their entire net worth unceremoniously dissipate. Conversely, I have seen astute investors demonstrate the profound wisdom of patience, strategically waiting to acquire assets precisely when the broader populace succumbs to widespread panic. The stark difference separating these two divergent groups is certainly not mere chance or good fortune. It is the unwavering embodiment of discipline, the singular capacity to dispassionately analyze raw numerical data while steadfastly filtering out the pervasive emotional clamor. Therefore, the urgent question arises, why am I sounding such a dire alarm at this precise moment? It is because I am perceiving an unfolding economic phenomenon that genuinely instills terror within me. I am witnessing an accelerating, massive divergence occurring across this nation's economic landscape. Certain states are rapidly transforming into formidable economic powerhouses, while others are inexorably evolving into what can only be described as economic graveyards, and the chasm separating these two trajectories is broadening with each passing day. The states that are emerging victorious are doing so with resounding success, characterized by remarkably low tax burdens, unequivocally business-friendly regulatory frameworks, an overwhelming influx of new residents, a deluge of capital investment, and an explosive creation of new employment opportunities. In stark contrast, the states that are unequivocally losing are doing so with catastrophic consequences, burdened by excessively high taxes, experiencing a relentless exodus of established businesses, suffering from continuous population decline, grappling with rapidly crumbling infrastructure, and facing residential real estate markets that are on the precipice of an absolute devastating demolition. Now I fully anticipate your immediate internal reaction. Kevin, you are being overly dramatic. Surely the situation cannot be quite that dire. Oh, but it is profoundly so, and I am prepared to substantiate every one of my claims with irrefutable numerical evidence. My analysis is founded not on fleeting emotions, partisan politics, or what you might prefer to believe, but solely on cold, hard numbers. Because, unlike individuals, politicians, or even real estate agents who might intentionally or unintentionally mislead, numbers unfailingly reveal the truth. It is a critical characteristic of real estate markets that they tend to move with deceptive slowness, often until they suddenly, dramatically, do not. For an extended period, a market can appear deceptively stable. Property prices might remain flat, perhaps experiencing only a fractional, almost imperceptible upward creep, fostering a collective illusion that everything is entirely normal and stable. Yet, beneath this placid surface, the fundamental underpinnings are insidiously rotting. Businesses are strategically relocating, younger generations are seeking opportunities elsewhere, and the crucial tax base is steadily eroding. And then, without much further warning, boom, the market unequivocally cracks. When such a fissure occurs, the decline is not a mere incremental 10% or 20%. It can plunge by a staggering 30%, 40%, or even a devastating 50%. Should you have acquired property at the peak of such a market, you find yourself utterly annihilated. Your hard-earned equity is irrevocably gone. You are left deeply underwater on your mortgage obligations, and you are effectively trapped, unable to sell, unable to relocate, utterly immobilized. This terrifying scenario is precisely what I am endeavoring to shield you from. This is the profound impetus behind the creation of this very video, because I possess the analytical foresight to discern the nascent cracks forming, to identify precisely which states are poised to plummet off a fiscal precipice. And my unwavering objective is to ensure that you are not the unfortunate individual left holding the bag when this inevitable collapse materializes. Allow me to elucidate the methodical framework I employ to meticulously analyze various real estate markets. My primary focus is unequivocally on migration data. Are people on balance moving into a particular state, or are they actively migrating out? A consistently negative net migration figure serves as an undeniable crimson flag, because a shrinking population invariably translates to a diminishing demand for housing, and when demand declines, property values inevitably follow. Secondly, I rigorously examine business formation and business exits. Are new companies being successfully established within the state, or are existing enterprises predominantly shuttering their operations? Are significant established employers choosing to remain, or are they strategically relocating their headquarters and facilities elsewhere? Thirdly, I scrutinize the prevailing tax environment. Are taxes steadily increasing or decreasing? This is paramount because taxes represent a direct cost, and within the realm of real estate, costs are a fundamental determinant of profitability and sustainability. Fourth, I meticulously assess the regulatory landscape. What is the ease or difficulty associated with constructing new housing developments? How straightforward or convoluted is the process of operating a business within the state? An environment where both building and conducting business are unduly arduous signals an inherent structural problem. And fifth, but certainly not least, I delve into debt levels. What is the quantum of debt accumulated by the state government itself? Furthermore, how much debt burdens its various municipalities? This indebtedness is of critical concern because ultimately these obligations must be repaid, and historically such repayments are financed through elevated taxes, which in turn acts as a further catalyst for residents and businesses to seek more favorable economic climates. When I systematically subject these 5 crucial factors to my rigorous analytical scrutiny, a clear pattern emerges, and 5 distinct states consistently register as absolute financial disasters. These are jurisdictions where every single discernible metric is relentlessly flashing, an unambiguous red warning signal, and to acquire a house in any one of these states is not to make an investment. It is, quite frankly, akin to deliberately setting your hard-earned money ablaze. I will now systematically guide you through each of these aforementioned states, meticulously detailing precisely why each one merits its position on my stringent avoid list. I will furnish you with the concrete data, illuminate the prevailing trends, and offer a candid explanation of the probable ensuing consequences. This comprehensive overview extends far beyond mere real estate dynamics. It delves into the very fabric of America's economic future. We are collectively witnessing a monumental reshuffling of economic power across the nation, and those states that stubbornly fail to adapt, those that persist in implementing the same counterproductive policies that actively repel residents and enterprises, are destined to devolve into barren economic wastelands. Yet before I reveal the identity of the very first state on this critical list, it is imperative that you grasp a fundamental truth. This analysis is entirely devoid of political bias. I hold no interest in your partisan affiliations, whether you identify as a Democrat or a Republican. My sole preoccupation is with the judicious management of your capital, ensuring you make sound, intelligent financial choices rather than imprudent, foolish ones. And to be unequivocally clear, purchasing a house in the wrong state at this juncture constitutes a profoundly stupid decision. Full stop. End of discussion. Therefore, here is what I require from you. You must temporarily set aside all emotional attachments and personal biases. You must be prepared to confront the undeniable facts. And critically, you must be ruthlessly honest with yourself regarding the true underlying reality of the situation, because the real estate market, in its relentless objectivity, simply does not care about your feelings, nor does it concern itself with your affection for local weather patterns or the cherished proximity of your family. It responds exclusively to the immutable forces of supply and demand, and in these 5 specific states, demand is currently in an advanced state of decline. Are you prepared? Are you truly ready to confront the identities of the states that are on the verge of becoming financial quicksand? Excellent. Let us commence with the first. State number 1, California. Now, before a torrent of indignant comments begins to flood the discussion, allow me to clarify my position without equivocation. I genuinely appreciate California. I have personally generated a considerable fortune through various endeavors within California, and I still maintain significant investments there. However, I am here to tell you with absolute conviction that if you are an ordinary individual contemplating the acquisition of a primary residence in California, you are currently making a grave error. The reasons are stark and compelling. The cumulative tax burden imposed within California is nothing short of absolutely crushing. Residents face a state income tax rate that can escalate to nearly 14% for those in the highest brackets, compounded by substantial property taxes, elevated sales taxes, punitive gas taxes, and indeed what often feels like taxes levied upon existing taxes. And what precisely is the tangible return for this immense fiscal outflow? All too often, it manifests as crumbling road infrastructure, alarmingly underperforming public schools in numerous districts, a spiraling homelessness crisis that has tragically veered beyond any semblance of control, and increasingly severe wildfires that escalate in destructive intensity year after year. Yet the most profound and genuinely alarming indicator lies within the devastating migration data. For an extended period now, California has experienced persistent net negative domestic migration, signifying that a greater number of American citizens are actively departing California than are choosing to relocate there. And who specifically comprises this departing demographic? It is predominantly the middle class, the very individuals who diligently contribute to the tax base, the productive citizens who engage in honest work and labor to establish and grow businesses. They are actively fleeing to states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and Nevada. The underlying motivation is clear. They are utterly exhausted by the relentless burden of excessive taxation, weary of suffocating regulations that render entrepreneurial activity virtually impossible, and exasperated by the prospect of paying upwards of $2 million for a home that would command a mere $400,000 in virtually any other comparable region of the country. While some proponents might argue, but Kevin, California boasts innovative tech companies, the allure of Hollywood, and undeniably pleasant weather, my response remains firm. Tech giants are establishing massive operational centers in burgeoning cities like Austin and Miami. Hollywood film productions are increasingly gravitating toward states such as Georgia and New Mexico, drawn by compelling tax incentives. and the intrinsic appeal of favorable weather becomes utterly irrelevant if you are financially incapable of affording to live there. Allow me to impress upon you a fundamental truth regarding real estate. While location is undoubtedly a significant consideration, underlying value holds far greater importance. And at present, California's real estate market is demonstrably overvalued by every conceivable metric. Price-to-income ratios are astronomically high, and price-to-rent ratios are equally off the charts. The only reason prices have thus far averted a catastrophic crash is due to persistently low housing inventory. However, this dynamic is rapidly shifting. As more residents continue their exodus and an increasing number of properties enter the market, the supply of available housing is poised to overwhelm the dwindling demand. And when that critical inflection point is reached, the consequences will be severe. What genuinely heightens my apprehension regarding California is the state's gargantuan unfunded pension liabilities and staggering obligation amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars owed to retired government employees. The inevitable question arises: how does one realistically propose to finance such an immense debt? The answer is tragically clear: through even higher taxes, and the predictable outcome of escalating taxes, a further acceleration of resident departures. It is a classic, self-reinforcing death spiral. And if your financial assets, specifically your real estate, are entangled within such a downward trajectory, you will undoubtedly be dragged down alongside it. State number 2, Illinois. Illinois. Where does one even begin to articulate the profound fiscal distress of this state? It is not merely on a trajectory toward disaster. It has, in actuality, already arrived. Illinois imposes some of the most exorbitant property taxes found anywhere in the entire United States. In certain counties, homeowners can anticipate remitting a staggering 2, 3, or even a daunting 4% of their home's assessed value annually solely for the burden of property taxes. Consider the stark implications of this. If you were to acquire a house valued at $500,000, your annual property tax obligation alone could easily reach $15,000. This is an utterly unsustainable figure, surpassing what many individuals pay for their monthly rent. And what are the discernible consequences unfolding across Illinois? Precisely the same pattern observed in California: a relentless flight of its population. The state's demographics are characterized by continuous contraction, and this exodus is not limited to individual residents. It extends crucially to its business sector. Numerous major corporations have already strategically relocated their headquarters out of Illinois, seeking more favorable operational environments in states like Texas, Florida, and other jurisdictions that genuinely express a desire to attract and retain them. Iconic names such as Boeing, Caterpillar, and Citadel, the formidable hedge fund, have all packed their bags and departed. When individuals of significant wealth and influence, such as billionaires, are actively distancing themselves from your state, it serves as an unequivocal warning sign. Chicago, historically the economic powerhouse of Illinois, is experiencing a lamentable decline. The murder rate has surged to alarming levels, businesses are closing their doors with disheartening frequency, and certain areas of its once vibrant downtown are increasingly taking on the appearance of a ghost town. In a desperate attempt to plug gaping budget deficits, the state government persistently resorts to raising taxes, a counterproductive measure that merely accelerates the departure of additional residents and businesses. It is the identical self-perpetuating death spiral I previously elaborated upon in the context of California. Yet, Arguably, the situation is even more precarious for Illinois, as it lacks the intrinsic advantages of California's appealing climate or its globally recognized technology industry to mitigate the impact. The unvarnished truth concerning Illinois real estate is this: by purchasing a property there, you are not merely acquiring a physical structure, you are intrinsically buying into a fundamentally broken system. You are, in essence, making a speculative wager that Illinois will miraculously manage to reverse its fortunes. And I am here to tell you, with the weight of data behind me, that such a transformation is exceedingly improbable without monumental systemic structural reforms, reforms that are conspicuously absent from the political agenda, as the state's elected officials appear more preoccupied with the preservation of their own power than with the urgent imperative of resolving the state's profound problems. State number 3, New York. I am intimately familiar with New York, having conducted extensive business operations within the state for several decades, and I readily acknowledge that New York City stands as one of the preeminent urban centers on the global stage. However, allow me to convey a harsh truth. The state of New York, as a whole, is systematically engaged in an act of economic self-immolation. The tax regime is nothing short of outrageous. The regulatory framework is suffocatingly dense, and the prevailing attitude toward business enterprises is regrettably hostile, bordering on openly antagonistic. I personally relocated my primary residence out of New York years ago, simply because I grew weary of dispatching massive checks to a state government that, in my estimation, demonstrated a consistent pattern of squandering taxpayer funds. And I am far from an isolated case. Tens of thousands of high-income earners have already made the deliberate decision to abandon New York, flocking to states such as Florida, which imposes no state income tax, to Texas, similarly devoid of a state income tax, and to Tennessee, another state characterized by an absence of state income tax. Are you now clearly discerning the recurrent pattern here? Individuals, and more importantly, financial capital, demonstrably gravitate toward favorable tax policies. And at this moment, capital is actively and rapidly withdrawing from New York at the swiftest possible pace. The New York real estate market, particularly in its more affluent segments, is currently being artificially sustained by a combination of foreign buyers and by a segment of the population effectively trapped within rent-controlled apartments. This, however, is an inherently unsustainable model, as an increasing number of corporations adopt permanent remote work policies, and as more individuals come to the stark realization that they possess the flexibility to reside virtually anywhere they choose, the fundamental question arises: why would any rational person elect to endure New York's exorbitant prices and punitive taxes? The answer is unequivocally that they would not, and indeed, they are increasingly choosing not to. Here is the trajectory I foresee for New York. Its critical tax base will continue to contract as high-income earners persist in their departure. In a predictable yet self-defeating cycle, the state government will respond by raising taxes even further to compensate for the diminishing revenue, a measure that will only serve to propel even more residents and businesses away. Eventually, this cascade of negative factors will manifest as undeniable cracks emerging within real estate prices. While Manhattan, often considered an anomalous entity, might prove somewhat more resilient, the suburban areas, the expansive upstate regions, and the outer boroughs will undoubtedly experience significant price depreciation. And if you are the unfortunate individual who acquired property at the apex of that market cycle, you stand to incur a colossal financial loss. State number 4, New Jersey. Let us turn our attention to New Jersey, a state that holds the unenviable distinction of imposing the absolute highest property taxes in all of America. Permit me to reiterate that with emphasis, the highest. It is entirely plausible to acquire even a modest family home in New Jersey and find yourself obligated to pay an astonishing $20,000, $30,000, or even a staggering $40,000 annually solely in property taxes. This astronomical sum is not inclusive of a mortgage payment. It represents the tax burden alone. And what, in return for this extraordinary fiscal contribution, does one actually receive? Frankly, not a great deal. While some specific regions boast commendable schools, other areas suffer from woefully inadequate educational institutions. The state's road infrastructure is notoriously dilapidated, its public pension system is teetering on the brink of insolvency, and the state government is predominantly controlled by politicians whose default response to every burgeoning problem is simply to levy yet more taxes. New Jersey, by virtue of its geographical position, is strategically nestled between the immense economic hubs of New York City and Philadelphia. Consequently, it should by all rights be flourishing. Instead, it finds itself in a state of perceptible decline. The fundamental reason is apparent. Residents are utterly exhausted by being taxed to the point of financial strangulation. They are weary of observing their neighbors consistently relocate across the border to Pennsylvania, where property taxes are substantially lower. They are disheartened by the continuous stream of businesses either shuttering their doors or choosing to seek more hospitable environments elsewhere. Here is the stark, unvarnished truth regarding New Jersey real estate. Its primary, perhaps sole, remaining intrinsic value is derived from its direct proximity to New York City. Historically, a significant portion of its population resided in New Jersey and commuted daily into New York for employment. However, with the pervasive and increasingly permanent adoption of remote work models by numerous companies, that daily commute has been rendered largely irrelevant. If one is no longer compelled to physically report to an office 5 days a week, the compelling rationale for enduring New Jersey's exorbitant housing prices and its crushing tax burden utterly dissipates. One simply would not, and this fundamental shift in utility is precisely why New Jersey's real estate market is destined to be severely impacted. I engage in frequent discussions with business owners who maintain operations within New Jersey, and their consistent message is unequivocal. They are actively formulating their exit strategies. They are relocating their enterprises to the more business-friendly climates of the South, to the dynamic markets of the Southwest, indeed, to virtually anywhere but New Jersey. And when businesses depart, the jobs inevitably follow. And when jobs vanish, the housing market, left without its vital economic foundation, inexorably collapses. State number 5, Connecticut. Connecticut serves as an archetypal illustration of the devastating consequences that accrue when a state persistently makes egregious policy decisions over a period of many decades. Once a bastion of prosperity and wealth, it historically boasted a robust economy underpinned by a strong insurance industry, vibrant financial services sector, and significant manufacturing capabilities. However, over time, a series of state governments incrementally and relentlessly raised taxes, continually layered on additional regulatory burdens, and systematically rendered the environment increasingly hostile to conducting business. And the predictable outcome? The businesses, once the bedrock of its prosperity, systematically abandoned the state. Major corporate titans such as General Electric and Aetna departed, along with countless hedge funds and other financial firms that strategically migrated to Florida's more accommodating fiscal climate. Connecticut continues to possess some of the most expensive real estate in the country, particularly within the affluent Fairfield County. But here lies the critical dilemma, that real estate commanded such high prices primarily because it historically served as the favored residential enclave for wealthy New Yorkers seeking to escape the punitive tax regime of New York City. However, with the advent and widespread adoption of remote work, the necessity of residing in close proximity to New York has been fundamentally negated. One can now choose to reside in Florida and benefit from a complete absence of state income tax, or relocate to Texas and similarly enjoy zero state income tax. Given these compelling alternatives, why would any discerning individual elect to remain in Connecticut, enduring its perpetually high property taxes, its substantial state income taxes, and contending with winters that can stretch for 6 grueling months? The logical answer is they would not, and indeed, people are increasingly making that exact choice. Connecticut's population figures have remained stagnant or have been in a state of gradual decline for numerous years. Its young, educated populace consistently departs immediately upon graduating from college, driven by a dearth of viable employment opportunities. Similarly, its wealthy retirees are seeking out other destinations, unwilling to continue shouldering the onerous tax burdens. What remains is a diminishing tax base, increasingly struggling to support an oversized state government and immense unfunded pension obligations. What truly instills apprehension in me regarding Connecticut real estate is the artificially inflated prices that still prevail in many areas, primarily sustained by a critically low housing inventory. Homeowners in these regions are naturally reluctant to liquidate their assets at a loss, choosing instead to stubbornly hold on to their properties. However, this unsustainable dynamic cannot persist indefinitely. Inevitably, these homeowners will be forced to confront the harsh reality that there is simply no genuine demand for their vastly overpriced houses situated within a state experiencing undeniable decline. And when a critical mass of these homeowners collectively attempts to sell their properties simultaneously, the market is destined for a catastrophic collapse. Allow me to underscore a crucial point. I am by no means asserting that these 5 states are destined to vanish entirely from the map, nor am I suggesting that every resident should immediately pack their belongings and depart tomorrow. What I am articulating with utmost conviction is this: if your current contemplation involves acquiring real estate specifically as an investment vehicle, if you are prudently considering where best to allocate and safeguard your capital for the ensuing decade or two, then these 5 states represent an unequivocally incorrect choice. The prevailing demographic and economic trends are resolutely stacked against you. The fundamental economic underpinnings are similarly arrayed in opposition to your interests. And most importantly, the hard, immutable numbers are unequivocally signaling for you to maintain a safe distance. As I consistently reiterate on Shark Tank, the numbers do not and cannot lie. And right now, the numerical indicators emanating from these 5 states are screaming a collective warning: stay away. So the logical follow-up question arises: what action should you undertake instead? Where should your discerning gaze be directed? This is precisely the critical information I am poised to share with you next. You are likely now pondering, Kevin, if these 5 states are indeed such financial quagmires, where then should I judiciously deploy my capital? Which states genuinely warrant consideration for investment? And this, precisely, is the pertinent question to pose, for while articulating problems is invariably straightforward, identifying and implementing viable solutions demands far greater acumen. However, I am prepared to furnish you with a robust framework that will empower you to make profoundly intelligent decisions. Firstly, allow me to articulate the specific criteria I meticulously evaluate when undertaking an analysis of real estate markets. I seek unequivocally positive net migration. I desire to observe a consistent influx of new residents rather than a debilitating exodus. I look for compelling evidence of businesses actively relocating to the state rather than strategically fleeing from it. A business-friendly tax environment is paramount, and it is crucial to note that I am not advocating for the absence of taxes entirely, but rather for a system that is reasonable and equitable, recognizing that taxes are essential for funding vital infrastructure, quality educational institutions, and public safety initiatives. I demand to see a state government that operates within its fiscal means, one that does not harbor colossal unfunded liabilities poised to transform into future tax bombs for its unsuspecting populace. And finally, I seek tangible evidence of robust job creation, specifically genuine private sector jobs that actively generate economic value, not merely an expansion of government-funded positions. When I apply this stringent analytical lens across the nation, a select cohort of states distinctly emerges as frontrunners. States such as Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Arizona, and North Carolina are currently experiencing significant economic victories. Their success is directly attributable to their deliberate implementation of policies that are diametrically opposed to those pursued by California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. These winning states are characterized by either low overall tax burdens or a complete absence of state income tax. They maintain judicious and reasonable regulatory frameworks. They are extraordinarily adept at attracting new businesses, and as a direct consequence, their populations are experiencing an unprecedented surge. Now, does this comprehensive assessment imply that you should immediately rush out and purchase a house in Texas tomorrow? Not necessarily. This is where a critical nuance of real estate investing comes into play. Timing is of paramount importance. At this precise moment, precisely because these states are widely recognized as burgeoning economic hotspots, property prices have predictably experienced substantial appreciation. In certain specific markets, values have escalated excessively and too rapidly. Therefore, prudent caution is advised. You must undertake thorough due diligence, meticulously examining specific local markets, individual neighborhoods, and particular properties. However, here lies the fundamental and crucial distinction. If you make the strategic decision to acquire property within a consistently growing state, even if you happen to marginally overpay in the immediate term, you possess the distinct advantage of having powerful demographic trends squarely on your side. You benefit from sustained economic growth as an underlying force, and you align with robust, positive migration patterns. Over an extended period, these powerful underlying fundamentals are highly likely to mitigate any initial overpayment, ultimately vindicating your decision. Conversely, if you choose to invest in a state experiencing decline, even if you manage to secure what appears to be an advantageous deal, you are effectively battling against an overwhelming economic tide. And engaging in such a battle against the tide is an inherently exhausting and financially draining endeavor. Allow me to illustrate this principle with a concrete example. Consider the scenario where you acquire a house in Austin, Texas for $600,000. Let us further assume that you slightly overpaid by approximately $50,000 due to the prevailing competitive market conditions. While this is certainly not ideal, consider the broader context. Austin is experiencing explosive growth, Major corporations are relocating their operations there. A vibrant influx of young, dynamic individuals is transforming the city. The job market is remarkably robust. Consequently, within a time frame of 5 to 10 years, that initial $50,000 overpayment will likely become an inconsequential detail, as the market's organic growth will have comfortably surpassed it. Now, contrast this with a different scenario. You purchase a house in Hartford, Connecticut for $400,000, and let us imagine you secured an excellent deal because the sellers were operating under duress. You might, in that moment, perceive yourself as an astute negotiator. However, within a similar 5 to 10 year horizon, that very same house might conceivably be valued at only $350,000 because Hartford is a city in demographic contraction. Its economy is structurally weak. Its populace is consistently departing. You may have indeed secured a good deal, but it was ultimately on a profoundly bad investment. This crucial distinction often eludes most people when it comes to real estate. Price is merely the monetary figure you exchange, whereas value is the enduring benefit or asset you ultimately receive. And true value is determined solely by the underlying fundamentals, utterly devoid of emotional considerations. I genuinely do not concern myself with whether you possess an affectionate attachment to a particular neighborhood or harbor nostalgic childhood memories from visiting a specific location. The market, in its cold objectivity, simply does not register your personal feelings. It cares exclusively about the irrefutable forces of supply and demand. Furthermore, let me address another significant economic factor currently influencing the market: interest rates. A considerable segment of the population is exhibiting heightened anxiety regarding current interest rate levels, frequently expressing concerns such as, "Kevin, interest rates are at their highest point in years. Should I postpone my purchasing decisions?" My consistent counsel in such situations is this: while interest rates are undoubtedly a relevant consideration, they are by no means the singular determining factor. In point of fact, periods of elevated interest rates can paradoxically create unique investment opportunities precisely because they tend to deter and scare away a significant proportion of other potential buyers. When a pervasive sense of fear grips the market, that is often when the most advantageous deals can be unearthed. However, the unequivocal key remains. You must, without exception, acquire property in the right place. A property burdened by a higher interest rate within a fundamentally growing market is invariably a superior proposition to a property acquired with a lower interest rate in a market experiencing structural decline. This is because within a burgeoning market, you retain the strategic flexibility to refinance your mortgage at a more favorable rate should overall interest rates subsequently decrease. Conversely, with a depreciating asset in a declining market, you are inextricably tethered to an asset that is systematically losing value, irrespective of the initial interest rate secured. My investment tenure in real estate spans 4 decades, during which I have witnessed interest rates fluctuate wildly from a modest 3% to an astonishing 18%. And through all these cycles, one immutable lesson has been indelibly etched. The interest rate consistently matters less than the fundamental location of the property, always, without a single exception. A robust property situated within a healthy, growing market will, over time, generate wealth for you at virtually any reasonable interest rate. Conversely, a flawed property within a deteriorating market is destined to incur financial losses even if the effective interest rate were hypothetically zero. Therefore, my most vital advice to you is this. If you are contemplating the acquisition of a house, you must cease perceiving it primarily as merely a place to reside and begin to conceptualize it as what it truly is, a significant business decision, for that is precisely what it represents. You are committing hundreds of thousands of dollars of your precious capital. You are voluntarily assuming a substantial debt burden. You are willingly accepting inherent financial risks. This is, in its purest form, a business transaction, and it demands to be approached with the same rigorous analytical discipline. Conduct your due diligence exhaustively. Meticulously examine the migration data, scrutinize the prevailing business climate, analyze the intricacies of the tax environment, evaluate the health and trajectory of the job market, assess the state's overall fiscal well-being, investigate crime rates, gauge the quality of local schools, examine the status of infrastructure, and only then, having meticulously gathered and analyzed all pertinent information, should you arrive at a decision based purely on demonstrable facts, entirely unclouded by fleeting emotions. Because I can assure you with absolute certainty that the market will, without fail, punish emotionally driven decisions every single time. Now, I recognize that a segment of my audience is undoubtedly thinking, but Kevin, I already own a house in one of those 5 states. What course of action should I pursue? And I acknowledge that this is an inherently complex and challenging question, largely because the act of selling a house is often financially arduous. You are confronted with realtor commissions, various closing costs, the logistical and financial burdens of moving expenses, and there is the distinct possibility that you might find yourself underwater on your mortgage if your purchase was relatively recent. Consequently, I am not advocating for an immediate panic-induced sale. Rather, I am urging you to proactively develop a comprehensive plan. If you are young, possess geographical mobility, and are not bound by deep-seated personal roots within that state, then I strongly advise you to seriously contemplate relocating. Actively seek out compelling opportunities within growing states. Target employment prospects in expanding markets, because it is crucial to recognize that your most valuable asset is not your physical house, but rather your inherent capacity to generate income. And you desire to position yourself in a location where economic opportunity is robustly expanding, not insidiously contracting. If, however, you are older, approaching retirement age, or deeply enmeshed by family ties that render relocation logistically challenging, then it becomes imperative to adopt a brutally realistic perspective regarding the actual market value of your home. Do not fall victim to the dangerous assumption that it will inevitably appreciate. Do not harbor the expectation that you will invariably sell it for a substantial profit. Instead, formulate your financial plans with the sober possibility that its value might be significantly less when you are ultimately ready to divest. And crucially, ensure that your retirement strategy is not unduly reliant upon tapping into home equity that may, in fact, no longer exist. Finally, if you are a landlord, if you possess rental properties within one of these identified states, you must monitor your financial metrics with the vigilance of a hawk. The moment your cash flow unequivocally turns negative, the instant the property ceases to generate positive income, then you must decisively exit that investment. Do not cling to a misguided hope that circumstances will magically reverse course, because within a declining market, hope is not and never will be a viable strategy. Hope is, more often than not, the very mechanism through which you ultimately lose everything. Here is the overarching principle I wish to embed firmly within your understanding. The American economy is currently undergoing a monumental transformative shift. We are witnessing an undeniable redistribution of economic power, migrating from the traditionally dominant old guard states to a dynamic cluster of new emerging states. This is not a temporary anomaly. It is not a mere transient blip on the economic radar. This is a fundamental structural restructuring that is destined to unfold and fully manifest over the course of multiple decades. And the respective real estate markets are serving as a clear and potent reflection of this profound shift. Those states that wholeheartedly embrace free market principles, that steadfastly maintain low tax burdens, that actively welcome and foster business growth, and that treat their resident citizens as valued customers rather than mere subjects, those states are unequivocally poised for unprecedented prosperity. Conversely, those states that stubbornly persist along the path of exorbitant taxation, stifling regulatory overreach, and an ingrained hostility toward entrepreneurial activity, those states are inexorably destined for profound decline. The equation is, truly, that straightforward. You are presented with a clear choice. You can elect to disregard these unmistakable warning signs. You can attempt to convince yourself that everything is perfectly satisfactory. You can proceed with the purchase of that house in California or Illinois or New York or New Jersey or Connecticut and cling to the elusive hope that through some unexplainable magical intervention, matters will ultimately resolve themselves. Or you can choose the path of wisdom. You can meticulously examine the empirical data. You can courageously accept the unvarnished reality, and you can consequently make a profoundly intelligent decision that will actively protect your invaluable wealth and strategically position you for enduring success. My own life has been characterized by significant success, and the underlying reason is not that I possess superior intelligence compared to others. It is rather attributable to my unwavering willingness to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. I am prepared to revise my perspectives when compelling new facts emerge. I am resolute in my conviction to diverge from the prevailing crowd sentiment when that crowd is demonstrably mistaken. And at this very moment, regarding the future trajectory of real estate in these 5 particular states, the crowd is fundamentally and unequivocally wrong. Now, I have a final request for you. If this video has genuinely broadened your perspective, if it has caused you to fundamentally reconsider your approach to where you intend to invest your hard-earned money, then I urge you to immediately strike that like button with vigorous intent. Furthermore, I implore you to share this critical video with every single individual you know who is currently contemplating a real estate purchase, because this vital information possesses the power to shield them from making a truly catastrophic financial blunder. And finally, I need you to subscribe to this channel and become an active member of our community. This platform is where we consistently deliver the unvarnished truth about financial matters. This is where we refuse to sugarcoat unpleasant realities. This is where we arm you with the indispensable information required to forge intelligent and impactful decisions. Do you comprehend the essential characteristic that consistently distinguishes successful individuals from those who are not? Successful people are distinguished by their propensity for decisive action. They do not merely passively consume information, they actively leverage it. Therefore, here is my explicit instruction to you. Procure a piece of paper right now. Clearly delineate the specific location where you are considering acquiring real estate. Then meticulously list the 5 crucial factors I elaborated upon: migration patterns, the prevailing business climate, the tax environment, regulatory frameworks, and the overall fiscal health of the state. Subsequently, dedicate several focused hours to rigorously research each of these factors pertaining to your target market. Scrutinize the data with a critical eye and be unflinchingly honest with yourself about the conclusions you draw. And if that empirical data unequivocally signals that you are on the verge of making a detrimental mistake, summon the profound courage required to alter your course. Do not permit your ego to impede your rational judgment. Do not allow past sunk costs to ensnare you. Do not permit the expectations of others to dictate your pivotal financial decisions. This is ultimately your money. This is your future. This is the paramount security of your family that demands your vigilant protection. I shall leave you with this concluding, poignant reflection. The real estate market operates with an unforgiving impartiality. It exhibits no concern for your deeply held dreams. It cares not for your meticulously crafted plans. It responds solely and entirely to the immutable forces of fundamental economics. And at this precise juncture, the fundamental economic indicators in California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are undeniably and profoundly broken. You possess the sovereign choice to either accept this stark reality or to stubbornly choose to ignore it. However, irrespective of your personal convictions, the market will inevitably proceed according to its own intrinsic logic, unswayed by individual belief. I have fulfilled my responsibility. I have provided you with the critical information. I have illuminated the undeniable warning signs. Now, the weighty responsibility rests squarely upon your shoulders to determine how you will act upon this knowledge. Will you be the individual who, 5 years hence, looks back with profound regret and laments, "I earnestly wish I had heeded Kevin's admonitions"? Or will you be the person who, with a sense of immense satisfaction, declares, "I am profoundly grateful that I paid diligent attention and consequently made a truly intelligent decision"? The ultimate choice is unequivocally yours, but always bear in mind, both within the unforgiving realm of business and in the broader tapestry of life, you rarely receive what you inherently deserve. You invariably receive what you successfully negotiate. And right now, if you attempt to negotiate with a dying real estate market, you are regrettably destined to lose. Do not allow yourself to become that person. Strive to be smarter. Strive to be better. Protect your invaluable money. Thank you for your attentive viewership. Now depart from here and proceed to make those critically smart decisions, for your future self will undoubtedly express profound gratitude.